All right, let us continue. You understood the meaning of work is love made visible. The next stanza goes like this: and if you cannot work with love but only with distaste, it is better that you should leave your work and sit at the gate of the temple and take alms of those who work with joy. Finally, Al-Mustafa tells the people, the Plughman and others, that if they don't like to do their work devotedly, what is the next choice they have? ಕೆಲಸನ ಶ್ರದ್ಧೆ ಭಯ ಭಕ್ತಿಯಿಂದ ಮಾಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತಂದರೆ ಅವ್ರಿಗಿರೋಂಥ ಒಂದೇ ಒಂದು ಆಯ್ಕೆ ಏನು? And if you cannot work with love but only with distaste. Distaste means dislike. If they dislike the work they do, then it is better that you should leave your work. Leave. Stop working. Leave is stop. Here in this context, he says it is better you stop working. After one stops working, what should he or she do? Sit at the gate of the temple and take alms of those who work with joy. This is the choice the people who dislike their work have according to Al-Mustafa. What should they do? After stopping their work, they should sit at the gates of the temple and seek alms. The meaning of alms: something given as charity. ದಾನ ಧರ್ಮ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರಲ್ವ, ಅದು ಚಾರಿಟಿ. ಏನು ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ? ದೇವಸ್ಥಾನದ ಹತ್ರ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ದುಡ್ಡು ಅಥವಾ ಊಟ, ಬಟ್ಟೆ ಇಂಥವು ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ವಾಟ್ ಶುಡ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಹೂ ಡಿಸ್ಲೈಕ್ ದೇರ್ ವರ್ಕ್ ಡೂ? ದೇ ಶುಡ್ ಲೀವ್ ದೇರ್ ವರ್ಕ್ and sit at the gates of the temple to receive alms. ಅವರು ಭಿಕ್ಷೆ ಪಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸಮಯ ಕಳಿಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ನಾವು ಶ್ರದ್ಧೆ ಭಯ ಭಕ್ತಿಯಿಂದ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡದಿದ್ದರೆ ನಮಗೆ ಉಳಿದಿರೋದು ಒಂದೇ ಆಯ್ಕೆ, ಅಲ್-ಮುಸ್ತಫಾ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ಭಿಕ್ಷೆ ಬೇಡೋದು. For if you bake bread with indifference, you bake a bitter bread that feeds but half man's hunger. ಅಂದರೆ Al-Mustafa is not telling that, okay, stop the work you do. If you don't like, okay, it's better you stop and go sit at the gates of the temple, beg. He does not really mean these things. He is telling the consequences of disliking one's work. If you dislike your work, you will never become successful. You never become successful. You never will be happy and satisfied in your life. He is trying to convey this message. He does not really mean that one who dislikes the work should stop, sit at the gates and beg. He is trying to advise them the consequence, ಪರಿಣಾಮ. ನೀವು ಶ್ರದ್ಧೆ ಭಯ ಭಕ್ತಿಯಿಂದ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡದಿರ ಇದ್ದರೆ ಆಗೋ ಪರಿಣಾಮಗಳನ್ನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು. ನೀವು ಯಾವತ್ತೂ ಜೀವನದಲ್ಲಿ ನೆಮ್ಮದಿಯಿಂದ ಸಂತೋಷದಿಂದ ಇರೋಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಅರ್ಥ. ನಿಜವಾಗ್ಲೇ ಹೋಗಿ ಭಿಕ್ಷೆ ಬೇಡಿ ಅಂತ ಅಲ್-ಮುಸ್ತಫಾ ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ನಾವು ಜೀವನದಲ್ಲಿ ಏಳಿಗೆ ಆಗಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ನುವಂಥದ್ದು ಅರ್ಥ. ಇನ್ ಕೇಸ್ ವಿ dislike our work, what is the effect? ನಾವು ಮಾಡೋ ಕೆಲಸದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಅಸಮಾಧಾನ ಇದ್ದರೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ? ಅದರ ಪರಿಣಾಮ ಏನು? For if you bake bread with indifference, Indifference is lack of interest. ಆಸಕ್ತಿ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಇರೋದು. ಉದಾಹರಣೆಗೆ, ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್, he is telling about baking bread. Any work for that matter, if you do it with disinterest, what will be the effect? And here he takes the example of baking bread. If you do it with disinterest, how will the bread taste? A bread ರುಚಿ ಹೇಗಿರುತ್ತೆ? It will be bitter. ಅದು ಕಹಿಯಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ, ರುಚಿಕರವಾಗಿರೋದಿಲ್ಲ. It will have a bitter taste, and that bitter bread cannot be eaten. ಯಾರು ಅದನ್ನ ಕೊಂಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ತಿನ್ನೋದಿಲ್ಲ. And that will not satiate the hunger. ಹಸಿವನ್ನು ನೀಗಿಸೋದಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂಥ ಆಹಾರ. ಸರಿ, ಯಾರೋ ತಿನ್ನೋದಲ್ವಾ, ನನಗೇನು ಅಂದರೆ, ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಟೈಮ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ವೋಂಟ್ ಬೈ ಬ್ರೆಡ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಯು. ದೆನ್ ಯು ವಿಲ್ ಲೂಸ್ ಯುವರ್ ವರ್ಕ್ ಆರ್ ಯು ವಿಲ್ ಲೂಸ್ ಯುವರ್ ಲೈವ್ಲಿಹುಡ್. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಸಂಪಾದನೆನ ಕಳ್ಕೋಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ವೈ ವಿ ಶುಡ್ ಇನ್ವಾಲ್ವ್ and do our work wholeheartedly. In other words, with devotion and commitment. Then the outcome will be satisfactory. If the outcome is satisfactory, you will be happy and satisfied. Hage. So this bitter bread will not help satisfy the hunger of people. It is because you have baked bread with disinterest. ಆಸಕ್ತಿ ಇಲ್ದಿರ ನೀವು ಬ್ರೆಡ್ನ ತಯಾರು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಾ, ಇನ್ನು ಟೇಸ್ಟ್ ಹೇಗಿರುತ್ತೆ? ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಲೈಕ್ ದಟ್. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಈ ಗಿವ್ಸ್ ಒನ್ ಮೋರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಇಫ್ ಯು ಗ್ರಡ್ಜ್ ದ ಕ್ರಷಿಂಗ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಗ್ರೇಪ್ಸ್, ಯುವರ್ ಗ್ರಡ್ಜ್ distills a poison in the wine. So when you prepare wine, any job for that matter, any work for that matter, should be done with devotion and commitment. And he gives the example of preparing wine, manufacturing wine. And if you do it half-heartedly, disinterestedly, with indifference, what will happen to the wine that you manufacture or prepare? It will be poison. Distill is you purify. Crushing the grapes, you crush the grapes to extract the juice. ಹಣ್ಣಿನ ರಸ ತಯಾರು ಮಾಡೋದು, ದ್ರಾಕ್ಷಾ ರಸ ತಯಾರು ಮಾಡೋದು. ನೀವು ಅದನ್ನು ಆಸಕ್ತಿಯಿಂದ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಆ ದ್ರಾಕ್ಷಾ ರಸ ರುಚಿಕರವಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಅದೇ ಆಸಕ್ತಿ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಉದಾಸೀನ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಆ ದ್ರಾಕ್ಷಾ ರಸದಲ್ಲಿ ವಿಷ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಅಂದರೆ ಕ್ವಾಲಿಟಿ ಇರೋದಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ. ಇಫ್ ಯು ಕ್ರಷ್ ಗ್ರೇಪ್ಸ್ and while doing your work, if you complain, how will the wine taste? It may be contaminated. It may contain poison. Don't take the literal meaning of all these things. ನೀವು ನಿಜವಾಗ್ಲೂ ನಾವು ದ್ರಾಕ್ಷಾರಸ ತಯಾರು ಮಾಡುವಾಗ ಈ ಕೆಲಸ ನನಗೆ ಇಷ್ಟ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಬೈಕೊಂಡು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ದ್ರಾಕ್ಷಾರಸ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದರೆ ಉತ್ತಮವಾದಂಥ ರುಚಿಕರವಾದ್ದು ನಿಮಗೆ ಸಿಗಲ್ಲ. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಆಸಕ್ತಿ ಇಲ್ವಲ್ಲ, ನೀವು ತಯಾರಿಸುವಂಥ ದ್ರಾಕ್ಷಾರಸ ಖಂಡಿತವಾಗ್ಲೂ ರುಚಿಕರವಾಗಿರೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಅದರಿಂದ ನಷ್ಟ ಅನುಭವಿಸ್ಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಆ ರೀತಿ ನಷ್ಟ ಅನುಭವಿಸಿದಾಗ ನೀವು ಕೆಲಸ ಕಳ್ಕೊತೀರ, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕೆಲಸ ಉತ್ತಮವಾಗಿರೋದಿಲ್ಲ ಅದು. ಸೊ ಇಫ್ ಯುವರ್ ವರ್ಕ್ ಈಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಸ್ಯಾಟಿಸ್ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ರಿ, ದೆನ್ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಆಫ್ ನೋ ಯೂಸ್, ಪ್ರಯೋಜನ ಇಲ್ಲ. ದೇರ್ ಫಾರ್ ಇಫ್ ಯು ಕ್ರಷ್ ಗ್ರೇಪ್ಸ್ ಇನ್ ಎ ಗ್ರಡ್ಜಿಂಗ್ ಮ್ಯಾನರ್, grudge means complain. You complain that you dislike the work, it is a burden, it is boring, it is difficult. If you complain like this and carry on your work, the outcome is unsatisfactory. ತೃಪ್ತಿದಾಯಕರವಾಗಿ ಇರೋದಿಲ್ಲ. Everybody wants quality, is it not? Like that. So if you complain, if you dislike, if you are disinterested in the work you do, the outcome for sure will be unsatisfactory. Therefore, involve in the work, do it wholeheartedly. And these are the consequences of doing work disinterestedly. He gives these examples to prove or show or illustrate that if one works with disinterest, the outcome is unsatisfactory. And last example he gives, and if you sing though as angels, even if you sing like angels, even if you sing like angels, angels are the messengers of God, they are divine beings. Even if you sing like angels and love not the singing, you may sing very melodiously, but if you don't love your job of singing, if you don't like your work of singing, then what is the consequence? What is the effect? You muffle man's ears to the voices of the day and the voices of the night. Your singing will not be satisfactory. It will not be liked by people. On the other hand, your singing only will obstruct. Muffle is obstruct. ತಡೆಯುತ್ತೆ ಅಷ್ಟೆ. ಮಫಲ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಅಬ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಟ್, ಅಡ್ಡಿಪಡಿಸೋದು ಅಂತ. ಯುವರ್ ಸಿಂಗಿಂಗ್ ವಿಲ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಅಬ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಟ್ ಮ್ಯಾನ್ಸ್ ಇಯರ್ಸ್. ಕಿವಿಗಳಿಗೆ ಅಡ್ಡಿಪಡಿಸುತ್ತೆ. ಏನು ಕೇಳಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಕ್ಕೆ? ದ ವಾಯ್ಸಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಡೇ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದ ವಾಯ್ಸಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ನೈಟ್. ಸೊ ವೆನ್ ಯು ಸಿಂಗ್ ಇನ್ ಎ ಡಿಸ್ಇಂಟ್ರೆಸ್ಟೆಡ್ ಮ್ಯಾನರ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಇಫ್ ಯು ಡಿಸ್ಲೈಕ್ ಯುವರ್ ಜಾಬ್ ಆಫ್ ಸಿಂಗಿಂಗ್, it won't be satisfactory. It won't give joy and satisfaction to the audience as well as to you. Most importantly, ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ನಿಮಗೆ ಸಮಾಧಾನ ಸಿಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ತೃಪ್ತಿ ಸಿಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಸಂತೋಷ ಸಿಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. Your song only will become an obstruction to the man's ears. It will be unpleasant. In other words, this is how Al-Mustafa explains the consequences of doing your work disinterestedly. Or if you dislike your work, these are the consequences. He gives the example of baking bread, crushing grapes to manufacture wine, and singing. He gives these three examples to tell you the effects of doing your work disinterestedly. All right. Now, let us recollect all that Al-Mustafa says very briefly. When I began the poem, I mentioned the themes of the poem. What does Al-Mustafa discuss? I mentioned, I wrote on the board. Let us just recall them in brief. Dear students, Al-Mustafa's sermon includes these themes. The first one is meaning and importance of work. Second one is work ethics. Selflessness is the third one. Dignity of labor is the fourth one. When you read this poem, you can get examples. He illustrates with examples. He defines what is work, why it is important to work. Questions for 5 marks may appear like this. What is work according to Al-Mustafa? Why must one work? What according to Al-Mustafa will happen if one does not work? These sort of questions may appear for 5 marks. You remember 80 to 100 words is the length, like that. So, when you read the poem, you can make out what examples has Al-Mustafa given to define or explain these themes. Read the poem once again. Try to identify, make out what examples Al-Mustafa has given to explain or illustrate these themes.